Hi everybody, it's Patty, Logger, ND, and I'm going to be doing a lot of green juices this upcoming week, and I like to put my green juices in glass containers, so I'm finishing up some kombucha that I had purchased earlier. So that will be the tasty beverage I will be enjoying while you all join me on this live Q&A. I do apologize for my absence last weekend. Last weekend I was going through a little bit of a, I don't know, just kind of debating about a lot of things, but I appreciate all of the feedback that and support many of you had given me when I was debating about whether I should continue on with these live Q&As, about whether I should continue offering courses. But I would like to point out that the online Human AMP course, that course has no barking dogs. This dog wasn't even alive when I recorded them, or maybe he was alive in a different body. But you know, my dog that barks all of the time, he was not alive in this current body of his to bark on those recordings. So if you think that those recordings are a reflection of my course, or I should say, if you think these Facebook live Q&As are a reflection of what my course would be like, they're not. The course that I developed was professionally done. It wasn't live, because a live broadcast, we have to deal with everything that happens, right? So if a dog barks, if there's a tornado, if there's an earthquake, whatever, you're live, right? So you just have to deal with it. The recordings, I was not live, and I did a lot of editing. I mean, there were hundreds of hours put into that whole course, and I hope that you don't think there's going to be barking dogs, or my behavior with the dogs, or the dog's behavior with me on these live Q&As is a reflection of that. You know, I'm really here to help people that have questions, and that's my goal. You know, I was just going through a hard time last week, but I got a lot of great feedback. So one thing that I want to talk about is kind of what I decided to do based on the feedback that I was given last week from all of you beautiful souls. So here's the thing. I'm not going to deactivate the online course. That's going to stay as is. And the online course will be one method that students who want to learn more about the human body will have, if that's the route they want to go. I think I've also decided to produce some DVDs that students can purchase. And I think I will make the DVDs maybe at the cost of shipping and handling when they're available to the online students. So if you're an online student, or if you've been an online student in the past, all you will have to pay when the DVDs are available are the cost it will make me to mail it to you. Okay, so those will be available to my current and future online students. But students may opt to not even do the online option, so when the DVDs become available, you can just pay for the DVDs then. And but unfortunately, with the DVDs, there is going to be a lack of the online assessment. So that I'm still kind of in the works of how am I going to test people to make sure that you really do understand the material. And I'm leaning more towards maybe just some, probably more so like some essay types of questions, because I really feel like when in my own Human AMP course, for example, my final exams are all essay questions, and I feel like when the students can write out a full response, that's how I can really tell if they understand the material. That's much better than multiple choice, where you can just guess, and you could be right, you could be wrong, but is it truly a reflection of what you know? I mean, obviously people, they really know it, they're going to do very well on a multiple choice type test. But essay questions, I think when you're writing out the answer and you're showing me that you really understand this, that gives me a better idea. And I know that the ISOD course, like when I did ISOD level 1 with Dr. Morse, there were some short answer questions, but there were some essay questions too. And I really like how Shannon and Dr. Morse put that test together. So it might be very similar to that, so that, you know, you're watching, you're learning, you're taking active notes, and then you're kind of showing me that you truly understand this material. And that way, when you get that certificate at the end, it really will be a reflection of that, of your knowledge, because, you know, this is going to be something that you will have that will show your future clients that, hey, I took the time to invest in my knowledge. I took the time to invest in my ability to help you. And that would make you a better, I think, resource to these individuals. And I'm just now noticing some people are posting some questions. So let me go ahead and read these. Hi, Garrett, and hi, John. Thank you both for joining me. My mouse is not working. So Garrett wrote, "It's the best course out there on A&P, very well put together." Well, thank you, Garrett. Do the quizzes via email? Yeah, that could do the quizzes via email, but like I said, I might just have a document that I might have students just email to me. So I might, when a student gets the DVD course, I might just kind of give them a link to some, I don't know, I haven't decided how I'm going to do it yet, but I like the email option, I think. And if it's an essay, you can email it to me as well. Let's see. John writes, "Honestly, the course material you provide is outstanding." Well, thank you, John. The thing is, you have to definitely, let's see, politic yourself more and get your message out to the right crowd. We always start slowly before it progressively moves towards recognition for the effort and energy and time put into it. Regenerative detoxification and A&P approach is new to people, and eventually it will take off. Well, thank you, John. I agree with you. And that's another exciting thing that I am going to be pursuing. And this will eventually be tied in with my online A&P course, but I'm going to write my own human anatomy and physiology textbook for natural health professionals. I don't see a textbook out there like that, and I've already kind of decided that I've got a source where I can grab images that I'll put into my textbook, but it's going to be a textbook that will be focused on all natural health professionals. I want to make this something that not only students going into the field where Dr. Morris is helping us learn about regenerative detoxification and natural healing, but also other natural healing modalities. I mean, homeopathy, aromatherapy, iridology, naturopathy, even students that maybe want to go back to school in a natural health field, but they really want to kind of, strengthen some of their understanding of the human body. So that textbook is something I'm going to be working on probably next year. Well, I don't want to say next year, probably towards the end of this year. I am in the middle of developing a new course for my current college. I'm developing a human A&P course for LPN students, which is kind of a little bit of an easier version. And I'm thinking of kind of not necessarily making my course easier, but I want to just focus on the basics that you need to know. A lot of my A&P course, I do go into some pretty intricate details. And like Dr. Moore says, really how the body works is very simplistic. But if we have kind of the vernacular, if we really understand the terminology, that will help us better able to communicate to those individuals that, are coming to us with, their lives and with their journey and with their struggles. We want to be able to tell them that we're a confident source, that they can have confidence in us. And that will, if they feel confidence, if they feel that they can trust you, they really will dive in deep. If they're kind of unsure, like, oh, who is this person telling me to eat nothing but grapes? They might not have that willingness to abide by your suggestions. And really, we know these suggestions work. A lot of us have done them. But yeah, so having that knowledge, I think, and so another thing with the human anatomy and physiology for natural health professionals that I want to include in a textbook like that. Like the current textbooks that I teach out of, they always have, like, for every single organ system, usually some kind of medical insert, like when a person has this disease, what's the common treatment? And, they talk about things that range from antibiotics to cortisone injections to chemo and radiation therapy. All of these incredibly toxic things that we do to the human body. And here I'm teaching about what the human body does when it's in a natural, healthy state. So in my Human A&P textbook for natural health professionals, I am going to include things about natural health. So instead of talking about, like, for instance, chemotherapy for certain types of treatments for man-made diseases, I will talk about the benefits of detoxification and how we lymphatically cleanse and how we have to strengthen the kidney's ability to filter. It will have a lot more information about what people in the natural health field would find valuable, because, allopathic A&P textbooks are really geared towards people going into allopathic modalities, nursing, medicine, physical therapy. But natural healing professionals, they really should have a nice understanding of everything out there that's available to them and what kind of resources, even if they won't use them in their own practice as a natural health professional, at least they'll know these things exist, right? So anyway, that's kind of also something I'm going to be working on, because I really want to make this a course that is going to really focus on my own work, my own creation, and a book that people will find valuable, as a valuable resource to refer to. Because when you're helping a client and they come to you and they have a certain diagnosis, we don't diagnose, but they might have gotten a diagnosis that has scared them, and that's why they're here to see you. We want to understand what's going on with their body. We're not really interested in the diagnosis. We're interested in what are the red flags that their body is showing them as a sign that something's wrong and we need to get to the core of it. That's really where we, as a detoxification specialist, step in to help with the healing. I'm going to return to the comments briefly. Miguel is here. Hello. John also writes, wouldn't surprise me as well, you promoting yourself and getting monitored and not getting to reach it should you get to others. Like the vaccine truth getting blocked. Yeah, vaccines. we can talk a whole several hours on vaccinations. And that's something with a textbook that I would provide. In the current textbook I teach, I do, as part of my review with my students, and you would get this in the current course that's available online, what vaccinations are classified as. And I talk about how vaccines work. But here's the funny thing. I remember just last year, I was talking about vaccinations and going over with my students not only how vaccines work, but before we discussed vaccinations, we went through the immune responses, cell-mediated immunity and antibody or humoral immunity. And I talk about both. And I talk about these immune responses are quite powerful. I mean, if they happen in an inappropriate way, you get a lot of symptoms. You get inflammation, you get pain, all of that. So these immune responses are nothing to mess around with. And here we are provoking them for no reason whatsoever. We're injecting into our bodily fluids an antigenic component or an attenuated pathogen, a weakened strain of a virus, for instance. And that's provoking an immune response. And one thing that I was thinking about, I was reading something about vaccines and realized that a vaccine is truly only triggering humoral immunity. It's not even triggering cell-mediated immunity, because these antigens that are injected into our bodily fluid, they're not, I mean, unless it's an attenuated virus, which then it's dangerous in of itself. But if it's just an antigenic component, it's being phagocytized by an antigen-presenting cell like a macrophage and displayed via MHC class 2 to a helper T cell to activate a B cell to become an antibody-producing plasma cell. And all it's doing is triggering the production of antibodies, which, yes, antibodies can agglutinate pathogens and, clump them all together, making them easy to be disposed of. But, it's like we do this, we're only triggering truly half of the whole immunity that we could have triggered if we had the natural way of reacting to this pathogen. And these doctors think that their vaccine's successful if they get a titer, if they have proof that we have antibodies. It just all seems kind of ridiculous because, yes, we have antibodies, but are they really protecting us? We haven't even truly elicited a response from both major branches of the immune system, and that's when you truly have protection. And that's natural. When you do that by a natural mechanism, not by an artificial mechanism, you have true protection. When you do that artificially, you're creating havoc in the body, you're creating these immune responses that do end up creating some damage, some inflammatory damage. And some people are very sensitive to this inflammatory damage, especially people that are very lymphatically congested. And you can see that in the iris. If you look at the iris of your client, you probably could tell that, yeah, you probably will have a reaction. I mean, a lot of people don't have reactions, and a lot of people don't even realize they're having a reaction. And I think a lot of us who have been vaccinated year by year by year, especially with the flu vaccine, we've become so dumbed down we don't even know, right? Anyway, Miguel says hello. Hello, Miguel. Can't wait for the textbook. I can't wait to start working on it. That'll be a lot of fun. Is there anything in the works akin to Dr. Morris's week-long class, maybe even in conjunction with Dr. Morris? I need to talk to him about that. I would love to head down to Florida and either work with him or perhaps offer something on my own down in Florida that would be more helpful to the work he's doing. So I haven't discussed that with him at all, but I would be very open to it. Amy joined. Hello, Amy. Jason writes, I'm here and listening. Thank you for giving us your time. Well, thank you, Jason. That's very sweet of you. Garrett writes, your textbook will be the go-to textbook for health and wellness professionals. Never has there been a textbook like this ever that you're going to create. Well, I hope that I can live up to that because I would love to create something that really is going to inspire and be truly helpful for natural health professionals. Where can I read about how the vaccines work? That was written by, I think, Ray Dost. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Well, the way vaccines work, I talk a little bit about it in my online AMP course. They're just simply eliciting an immune response. So if you understand the immune responses, and there are two major categories. There's cell-mediated, which involves cytotoxic T cells, and then there is antibody-mediated, which involves plasma cells. I'm sitting here before I started recording. We got a new textbook at the college I work at, and I have to start changing all of my images to reflect the images that are in this new textbook. And so I can kind of show you the two different types of immune responses. Well, they've got some pictures in this book. This book really isn't that great as far as the images are concerned. But if you have an understanding of the immune response, that's what you're triggering. So to understand how vaccines work, you really have to understand how our immune system works. And our immune system, as I've mentioned, is really nothing to mess with. It's very powerful, and it's usually on our side. But when we start provoking it unnecessarily, I think that we can start creating these reactions in the body that create symptoms. And since the advent of vaccinations, since they were introduced into our population, which really wasn't that long ago. When you look at the history of humanity, how long humans have been walking on this planet and how long we survived without vaccinations, and then we're told that, oh, well, we only lived to our 30s back in those days, or 40s, the people were dying when they were 40. That is bullshit. If you look at, people really can't understand basic science, people that say things like this. They look at the average length of life, right, for any given time period. And a lot of people back, hundreds of years ago died in childbirth. It's quite interesting, the human species. We can go down a whole nother avenue with this discussion, but humans are very interesting compared to the other life forms on this planet. And, with regards to childbirth, we are bipedal organisms. We the female, our pelvis is oriented in such a way that it's more vertical compared to like a quadruped whose pelvis is more horizontal. And a lot of quadrupeds, a lot of mammalian quadrupeds have a much easier time with the childbirth process compared to humans. Now, with humans, if a woman is healthy and, and she's just naturally giving birth and she puts herself in the right position, she can easily give birth to a child. But now we've created this fear with childbirth, and I think that people back in the hundreds of years ago, some people maybe for whatever reason died very young. And, there were other things with how long people lived. Our human species is a very brutal species. Look at all of the hundreds of genocides and how many people have been killed. So just because the average age of life was maybe in the 30s or 40s doesn't mean that's how long humans could live. People were living very long lives if they were not interfered with by war or uncleanliness. So, people were living close to maybe 100 or more years back in those days. But a lot of people died young. So when the majority of your population is dying very young, the average age of life was probably 40 or something like that. So it's not reflective that these vaccines did anything to improve that, okay? And plus, a lot of these vaccines were introduced when the disease was already on a major decline. I have the book right here. Let me show you this. Some pictures from this book. This is one of my favorite books. I like to work with my own animals at home as far as helping them with their health. And I really feel homeopathy is amazing for cats and dogs. I've seen miracles happen. So, and homeopathy is good for humans, but with cats and dogs and even young children, they seem to be very responsive to the energy in homeopathy. But anyway, the author of this book, he being a homeopath, understands the dangers of vaccinations. And he's got some interesting graphs that I always like to show people because they are basically showing how these vaccines were introduced and then they started to become, praised as these amazing ways to protect us, but they're really not protective at all. So here we have a graph. First we have measles and then whooping cough. I'll show measles first. Okay, I don't know if you can see this, but they have measles, and you can see the years are on the x-axis at the bottom. And you can see there was a decline in measles. And then look at when the vaccine was introduced. I mean, measles was pretty much on the way out. Same thing for whooping cough. They show the time when the vaccination was introduced. And as you can see, the disease, the infectious expression of this pathogen was already on its way out. I think there's more in here, more graphs. And same thing for polio. I was watching, Lynn Caldwell posted a video, and I ended up sharing it on my page. But Dr. Wakefield, who is the physician that always gets, you know, a bunch of crap for his documentary on Vaxxed. And, you know, people, I mean, even people that I know personally think he's a quack because his research wasn't done the appropriate way. So then now they're throwing out all of his work, anything that he's ever said to support the idea that possibly vaccines are dangerous. But he was in this recent video that I posted, and it's on my Facebook page, about how measles has actually become a more dangerous pathogen because of the constant amount of vaccination that's been put forth. It's an interesting video. Okay. Wayne writes, hello from Michigan. Hello. Radost writes, is really normal to have a strong pain when you're giving birth? You know, it's in when females give birth. Loretta Jean, stop it. Sorry. When humans give birth, I don't think there should be much pain. Like I said, a lot of pain is associated with inflammation, but I think that the anatomy of the female human is a little bit more challenging compared to a quadruped. And I just think when you're in the correct position, childbirth should be rather easy. But there are some natural poses women could do, which involve kind of squatting and leaning over. You know, laying on the back and giving birth that way is not very healthy. Or I shouldn't say it's not very healthy. It's just not as ideal as like what a quadruped would do when they're giving birth. So you really have to angle your hips in a different way. Loretta. So, but you know, humans are unique. We're kind of a unique species, and there's a lot we could talk about humans. All right. So, so yeah, that was kind of some of the feedback or my decision based on the feedback about my online A&P course. So I just want to say that the course will be as it stands currently. So a couple of things that I wanted to talk about. I had a question that was emailed to me. This one from Stephen. Stephen writes, where does anxiety come from? What starts these feelings? I have a friend with a good life but has a hard time with anxiety. Tell me your thoughts on this and what can be done about it. Thank you. All right, so anxiety. Dr. Morse associates anxiety with adrenal gland function. Our adrenal glands are strongly connected with the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight branch of our autonomic nervous system. And when it's overstimulated, which happens to a lot of organs, when any organ in the body is congested, sometimes it becomes hyperactive and it starts to hypersecrete. It starts to hypersecrete hormones like epinephrine and norepinephrine. So that could start triggering the feelings of anxiety and nervousness and just feeling on edge all of the time. And then what happens when that which is provoking this response, when that is chronic, when that has not been dealt with, then you end up with adrenal burnout, and the adrenals just start crashing, and you end up with fatigue and just energy depletion. And, when that becomes very, very chronic. So there is something that I teach in my A&P course about the phases of the stress response, and ARE. And A is the alarm phase, R is the resistance phase, and E is the exhaustion phase. And so when we reach the exhaustion phase, that's when your electrolytes have been depleted, hormone production, enzyme production, all of that has been depleted to such a point that your body just cannot function. But leading up to that, a lot of anxiety is felt, nervousness. But, that's just kind of the physical answer to that, right? So I'm surprised more humans aren't anxious, to be honest with you, because our society is anxiety provoking. I mean, look at the media. Look what they're constantly doing to people that are addicted to this programming. So I often tell people, one of the best things you can do to heal yourself is to stay away from these things that are triggering these responses in your body. Like turn off the TV. It's all, they call it television programming for a reason. It's programming your mind. It's programming you to become somebody that just follows the herd, that is going to be easily controlled, someone that's going to be easily manipulated. So, and one way they can control people is through fear. It's quite interesting. I was reading, this past week, I've been really interested in Dr. Gonzalez. And I ended up buying a couple of his books. I already had a few of his books. Like I have the Trophoblastic Theory of Cancer or something like that. And it's quite an interesting theory. Let's see. So this is one of the books that I ordered by Dr. Gonzalez. I'll just show it to you. This is a new book that I ordered. And Dr. Gonzalez died in 2015, along with, many of the other natural healers that just all of a sudden, even though they were healthy and nothing was wrong and it was a big surprise, they just up and died one day. And prior to him dying, just before he died, he was part of this research where he really thought that his cancer fighting protocols were going to be shown as being an effective way of helping people heal their pancreatic cancer, or all other cancers really. And his research was manipulated, it was hijacked, and then he ended up dying. It was just so sad to see such an intelligent man. I mean, I posted a couple of videos by him on my Facebook channel, and he really highly, incredibly intelligent man, like I said. And his explanation of cancer is something I'm going to include in my online, or not in my online, but in the textbook I'm going to write. He describes a lot of the cancers which are epithelial cell cancers, which the majority of them are. I mean, there can be other types of cancers like glial cells and whatnot, but for, like leukemias, those types of cancers are coming from a bloodline. But a lot of the other cancers are epithelial in origin. So the epithelial cells, those are the cells that line passageways in the body. They line our skin. And a lot of those cancers, he was discussing how they're very similar to what is called a trophoblast. The trophoblast is part of the pre-embryonic organism. So shortly after conception, when the sperm fertilizes the egg, and then that is implanted into the mother's uterus. What you have there is called a blastocyst when it's being implanted. And part of the blastocyst is called the trophoblast, and it has to actually digest its way into the endometrium of the uterus. And that's kind of similar to how a cancer starts to become invasive and dangerous at that point. And it's differentiating into something that's, able to just replicate out of control, because a lot of us are taught in a typical cell biology or physiology course that mature cells cannot divide. Once a cell has reached maturity, it cannot divide. So how are these cells dividing out of control if they're mature cells? And really, it's not the mature cell that's the problem. It's the cell that has reverted back to kind of a earlier stage in life where it is highly capable of dividing. So anyway, he goes through this entire description, and he starts talking about that in reference to how his method of dealing with patients that have been diagnosed with cancer. But his description of that was, I think, genius. And he basically came up with this idea based on people in the early 1900s and 1800s that had this theory of cancer. And then a lot of their work was just kind of pushed to the side. And then Dr. Gonzalez, brought it back to life. And now who knows who's dealing with it now that he's been passed away. But I'm interested in looking at what he was doing and his protocol. I know he did use coffee enemas, and I know Dr. Morse is not a fan of coffee enemas. And so, with coffee enemas, I don't know, are they quite as important as we make them out to be? There are other ways of cleansing the liver, the colon, other than introducing coffee into the rectum, which is then, theoretically the way this works is that it's reabsorbed into the hepatic portal circulation, which sends all of that blood, that's absorbing the coffee, to the liver, and that's how it's cleansing the liver. So, like Dr. Morse, I kind of question that, I don't ever want to totally write off anything, because sometimes I like to experiment with these things. I've experimented with coffee enemas in the past. And but I know Dr. Gonzalez, part of his protocol involves coffee enemas, and part of it involves a lot of digestive enzymes. So anyway, I kind of went on a tangent here, because why did I started talking about him? It was in reference to Stephen's question about anxiety, and I was going to mention, as I was reading Dr. Gonzalez's work and his systemic enzyme therapy protocol, which basically he's giving individuals proteolytic enzymes, which are not to be confused with digestive enzymes. A lot of these proteolytic enzymes are digestive enzymes, but instead of these enzymes being taken with food, these enzymes, which are taken in at much higher dosages, are taken while fasting or while you don't have any food in your system. So at least like an hour or 2 hours without eating, before or after eating. So they typically recommend to take these enzymes either first thing in the morning or last thing before you go to bed, as long as it's been like an hour since you've eaten. And then these enzymes, which include things like proteases, trypsin, chymotrypsin, carboxypeptidase, these are protein-cleaving enzymes that typically break down the proteins of the food we eat. But when taken therapeutically during a fasting state, these enzymes get absorbed into our blood. And then a red flag came in my mind. I'm like, well, these enzymes, which are protein in nature, wouldn't they be digested? And there have been several research studies that have noted that these enzymes are not digested. They're actually absorbed in their full state, which is kind of interesting. So these enzymes are absorbed in their natural state, and they get into the blood. And once they're in the blood, then they really start breaking things down inside of our body. So some of the things that have been noted with these proteolytic enzymes that have been absorbed into our blood and other bodily fluids is that they break down fibrous masses. So like fibroid types of tumors, fibrocystic masses in the breast of women and even of men, even breaking down some cancers. I know Dr. What is his name? I can't think of his name right now. he's still alive, but he's a natural healing doctor. He was talking about one such proteolytic enzyme called serrapeptidase, which I think he uses therapeutically to help with people to break down these types of things. So I just find all of this very interesting, right? So I find it very interesting. Not that I would recommend that. And even if I were to think about it, I would have to do some self research on it, because that's kind of how I learn these things, right? So, but people have claimed that they've had a lot of good results from these proteolytic enzymes. One thing, though, that Dr. Gonzalez talked about. Dr. Gonzalez talks about the healing crises that people experience. Because a lot of times, Loretta, stop it. A lot of times when these masses are broken down, all of the waste that have been accumulated behind the mass, whether it be kind of a protein-based fibrous type of mass, they all get released. And then when they're released into the circulation, people feel really sick. And people have experienced this, especially at the higher doses of these proteolytic enzymes. So, this is some research that I'm just personally reading about it. I'm not advocating this. I know Dr. Morris does not really like digestive enzymes because, as Dr. Morris teaches, when you're taking digestive enzymes, you're really not letting your pancreas do what it needs to do, right? Some say, though, that these digestive enzymes are giving your pancreas a break. And if your pancreas is overworked, maybe it needs a break. I've read some natural health professionals state that the pancreas really is one of those organs before somebody really gets diagnosed with a serious chronic diagnosis that an allopathic doctor would give them. They would have a lot of pancreatic issues like gas and bloating. And so gas and bloating, that's a sign, right? That's a sign that something's going on, something's wrong with you. And what do you need to do to fix it? So that's really what I want to talk a little bit about. Not too many people are commenting any longer. Can you guys all still hear me? I know last time I did this live Q&A, I had some video problems. I'll just assume y'all are still with me because I'm not seeing any comments. It shows that 5 people are watching though, but I am seeing no comments right now. Wendy was the last person that commented, and she wrote ditto. Maybe a lot of people are turned off because of the dogs, and like I said, I apologize. But what I was talking about with regards to the fear, I was reading this article, and it was entitled Systemic Enzyme Therapy, which is basically associated with the work Dr. Gonzalez does. But when I read the article, when I actually was reading it more fully, it was actually written by an allopathic physician who had the intention of making Dr. Gonzalez and his enzyme therapy out to be some big quackery. And, however you feel about digestive enzymes, that's fine. Like I said, I kind of tend to agree with Dr. Morse. And as a natural hygienist at heart, I really don't like to take too many supplements that are not necessary for healing. I really like to let nature, the fruits and the herbs, do their healing naturally. But it was just kind of funny. The guy that was writing this, and I don't know if I still have the original article. I might have actually gotten rid of it because I thought it was nonsense. I think some people have commented, maybe to let me know that I'm not alone here. So Wayne's still here. Jason's still listening. Sean, no worries about the dogs. Thank you, Jason. I'm on a quest to heal my son who is a type 1 diabetic. Ah, okay. Well, I'm glad that you're on that quest because if your son is young enough, I have personally seen children do very well following a natural approach. And don't be afraid of the fruit. You will get a probably a glucose elevation initially with the fruit, but if you stay with the clean fruits, maybe add some green juices as well. And then use something like Dr. Morse has a formula called a healthy glucose. That's really helpful to kind of help maintain normal, healthy blood glucose levels. But Jason, I'm glad you're here with us. So anyway, let me see if I can find this article. Yeah, this was it. This guy was so arrogant. I mean, honestly, some of these allopathic physicians are so arrogant in the way that they talk about cancer, and they want to make cancer out to be something that is so complex and hard to understand, and we the mealy, pedestrians or citizens of the country, we could never understand cancer. That's only occulted by the religious sanctity of allopathy, and they're the only ones that have this knowledge, and no one else can have it. Anyway, he was just talking about how Dr. Gonzalez's treatments and his simplistic view of cancer is nonsense. You know how they just try to come off as being the only source for any kind of truth and healing. And it's so arrogant. I mean, and yet these are the same people that kill thousands of people every year with their treatments. One of the things that Dr. Gonzalez was being interviewed by Dr. Mercola before he died. And Dr. Gonzalez, as being one of the top alternative cancer doctors and researchers, if a patient dies under his care, obviously he will get, the severe treatment of, oh, your practices are dangerous and you're evil for even having people do these alternative therapies. And yet allopathy kills thousands and thousands and thousands of people all the time, every single day, with their crazy ass procedures. I mean, injecting chemotherapy, very strong acids into the blood, killing all cells, killing all fast dividing cells. I mean, that's why people get the symptoms they get with chemotherapy. All fast dividing cells are dying. So the cells that produce your hair, they're fast dividing cells. Those cells die off, you get hair loss. The cells that produce your red blood cells and your white blood cells, those start dying off. So people become anemic and their white blood cell counts drop, and they become at risk now for infection. So they have to stay in a sterile environment. The cells lining their GI tract, fast dividing cells, so they start dying off and they feel sick to their stomach and nauseous all of the time. I mean, this treatment is terrible. Will it kill the cancer cells? Yes. But will it kill everything else? Yes. And it often brings, as Dr. Morse talks about, the blowback. The blowback where down the line the cancer returns, it's more aggressive than ever because you never got to the root of the problem. You never looked at what was it? What was that initial irritant that was triggering this cascade of responses that led us to the cancer in the first place? No one ever looks at that. People in the natural healing field, though, do. Let's see. Diana writes, hello. Hi, Diana. Jason writes, improving my vitality along the way. Yeah, if you have a child, Jason, that has any kind of health challenge, you as a parent have to be really taking care of yourself because your health is going to then be able to support your child's health. And together you can make this a fun journey for both of you. I worked with, when I was at Dr. Morse's office, I worked with the whole family. And the son, he was like, I think 9 or 10, he had type 1 diabetes. And the parents, with their diligent work, was able to get their son off of insulin. So this is a type 1 diabetic who they say must have insulin, who wasn't using insulin, but was using just nature to heal and sticking with the fruits, sticking with the greens. and some herbs. So a lot of the herbs that I know that I like to use Dr. Morse's herbs, but they were helping this person maintain a normal, happy, healthy life. But you have to be diligent, and that means you have to kind of also be on the healing path with your child. Jason also writes, I'm trying to determine if his type 1 is neurological or genetic. Yeah, I don't know about the best way to determine that. So I might have to do some of my own research. Dr. Morse, he's the one that goes into that categorization of type 1 as being neurological or genetic. The way that allopaths teach type 1 diabetes mellitus is that it's an autoimmune disease, if you weren't aware. So like in the textbooks I teach out of, these textbooks teach that type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disorder. So our own immune cells are attacking the beta cells of the pancreas, and when they become attacked, they no longer produce insulin. And therefore, you need insulin therapy. But we know that there are type 1s that don't need insulin. I worked with one in Dr. Morse's office. Diana writes, what does it mean when a tumor has blood flow to it? Is someone still able to use black salve? So when a tumor has blood flow to it. Well, there's two types of tumors or neoplasms, benign or malignant. So typically the more malignant types of tumors that are able to break through the basement membrane, if it's an epithelial type of tumor, and start becoming more invasive, those types of cells are capable of kind of creating blood flow towards themselves so that they can, in their greedy little way, get more resources so they can just amplify themselves. So cancer cells, as they start dividing, they start utilizing a lot of resources, and they actually start stealing calcium from our bones. So it's not uncommon for people with certain types of cancers to become osteoporotic or develop osteopenia or osteoporosis. But with Dr. Morse's teachings, it's really, when you look at it, systemic acidosis, right? So if you had enough acidosis to cause the cancer or the rapid growth of cells in the first place, though that same acidosis is probably leaching calcium from your bone tissue. So that's why you see that. But yeah, certain tumors do have a high vascular supply. So they're just trying to get resources, right? Like any group of people that are sucking other people dry. They're trying to divert as many resources to themselves. So using a black salve, black salves, I used to have a document on black salves. It's really hard to come by those, but I know that they're out there. If you're using a black salve, I would only use it topically. I don't know. I think there might be other types of black salves that can be taken orally, but I've never worked with them. I know, though, that black salves used like on the skin have been helpful, but they're very, they're powerful, right? So they'll pull. They can really kind of create like a little hole in your skin, and depending on where that neoplasm or tumor is located, that could lead to some disfigurement and scarring. Jason writes, one day I hope he'll decide his food choices independently, so I'm being his light. Oh, that's awesome. Jason writes, before that, no support from my immediate family, so it's hard to keep his diet regulated. That's super tough. Yeah, that is tough when people aren't all on board with the diet. And then, it's a struggle when you're trying to help. I know, like with my dogs, I'm 100% in control because I'm the only one that lives with them. And they're incredibly spoiled, as you guys all can tell. But they get a very clean, species-appropriate diet for their physiology. Dr. Morse sells black salve. Yeah, I know Dr. Morse does have a black salve. And like I said, it can be very powerful. So you just want to, be careful when you use it. are herbs a waste in the meantime? Are you saying are herbs a waste if he's not on the diet? And I'll let my crazy dog in 1 second. So if you could elaborate on what you mean are herbs a waste in the meantime. And you keep adding these acidic foods, these acidic ash foods, these congesting types of substances, then the herbs can only break down what you keep adding, and it's like nothing's happening, right? So you have to be on the diet to really get the most out of it. And really, for people that are on a budget, you can do this without the herbs. You can do this, if I had to pick one thing to help me on a detox protocol, I would get Heal All Tea. And just get a bunch of Heal All Tea and drink that several times a day. You can even make a poultice out of it if you're dealing with a skin infection or anything topical. And that by itself, incredibly powerful. So, I know that not everybody can afford the herbs. And I know Dr. Morris has people that donate, and, they do a lot that they can to help people that are on a budget. But, the diet is really foundational. You really have to be on the diet because, we can't be adding more stress to a body that's at a level of stress where it's already exhibiting symptoms of dis-ease, of something going wrong. And if we keep down that path, you're just going to make a bad situation worse. But kind of getting back to the anxiety. Oh, Stephen or Jason had a few more questions. If he eats sad, or herbs, pointless. Okay, got it. Thanks. Yeah, so do your best to help him eat as healthy as possible. I don't know who's giving him these foods that are inappropriate, but I do, do your best that, when he's around you, what can you do to really help him cleanse? Eat lots of grapes, eat lots of cherries, eat lots of green juices, or drink lots of green juices. You can make it fun for him and he'll love it. And little kids love fruit. I mean, they really are naturally drawn to fruit. How many hours a day do you feel fasting is important, or dry fasting? Well, I probably am only eating, I usually have tea in the morning and then I'll have some fruit for breakfast. But by the time I'm having fruit, it's like 10 or 11. And then I'm pretty much done eating around 6. So, I don't know, 10 to 6, make that your eating window. And this is just what I do. I'm not saying you have to do this. But the rest of the time, not eating is probably a healthy thing because we don't need to be eating constantly. Now, with regards to dry fasting, I only use dry fasting therapeutically. I don't do it on a regular basis. So one reason to incorporate dry fasting into a healing protocol, let's say that you're doing the herbs, you're doing something like a grape fast, and you're just not budging, so symptoms aren't going away. Like for instance, I worked with a client who had a lot of swelling in her ankles, and she was on, I wrote her up a protocol, and she was doing it. She was, working it. And a lot of things were going in the right direction for her as far as some symptoms, but her primary symptom wasn't budging. And her primary symptom was swollen ankles. And despite her sticking with it, she was just kind of reaching this wall. And so that's when she agreed to dry fasting. So at first she was a little hesitant to dry fast. But it was kind of, we were at a point where it's kind of, well, we have to try something we haven't done yet. And I told her to slowly start adding or extending the length of her dry fast. And she started with 12 hours and then 14, and she progressed to 36 hours. And it was a 36-hour dry fast that did it for her. And all of a sudden, she saw a lot of sediment in her urine, and it was with her seeing the sediment in her urine that she also then had her ankle swelling go away. Is it a coincidence, or could that congestion that was in her swollen tissues around her ankle be what she was witnessing in her urine? So, I think for everybody, it's kind of it's a personal journey, really. You have to just experiment. A lot of this is, because I think a lot of people that come to us as detoxification specialists, and even those of you that are out there just wanting to heal, we're so programmed to think that there is just this one method, one answer for everybody, and it's going to work for everybody the same way. Really, every individual is unique, and so we kind of have to find what works best for us. And so that goes along with dry fasting. So some people don't need to dry fast. Their kidneys are, constantly removing the things that are clogged up in their system, and their bodily fluids are becoming cleansed. But other people, they benefit quite a bit from dry fasting. So again, it's kind of an individual thing. So I would start with 12 hours of dry fasting and then work your way up, though. And you'll find your magic number. I know I remember one client I had, his magic number was 15 hours. That's when he would see symptom relief and sediment in his urine. Let's see. For calcium super blend 2 or 3. I know, calcium is, now when I was working with Dr. Morse, superfood blend number 2, which I'm pretty sure is pretty much still the same formula, but it was more of the go-to superfood formula that was richer in both calcium and vitamin B12. So, a lot of people who would naturally want to take a calcium supplement or a B12 supplement or a B vitamin supplement, I would say it's much better to get it from nature, from the plant sources, and Superfood 2 would be the go-to. And Superfood 2, because of the B vitamins that are more prevalent, it's always better to take that in the morning. So like if I take Superfood 2, I'll add it to my morning smoothie, and then it will give me the energy for the rest of the day. I don't think I ever really finished, though, Stephen's question. So what I was going with was about anxiety and the adrenal glands and adrenal burnout, and how I'm a little bit surprised that more people, excuse me, more people aren't burnt out. More people aren't anxious, because we live, like I said, in a society where they're constantly trying to control us with fear, and they want us to feel helpless. And when you feel helpless, you're more likely to be scared, and you're not going to feel like you have the strength to do this on your own. And what I'm saying is that everybody has the power to heal themselves. Everybody does. I wanted to maybe share a little story with you all. And see if anybody else had a comment here. Jason did. Jason writes, I have to quit watching. I'll watch the rest of this video as soon as possible. I know not a lot of people aren't showing interest now in this live feed, but you're making a difference in my life. Manifesting much love towards you. Well, thank you, Jason. Yeah, I'm down to 1 viewer right now. So, but I'm going to make a recording of this. And by the way, all of my recordings, I'm going to put on my private Facebook group, which in this video, you'll see in the description of this video, it's Human AMP for Detox Specialists. And if you join that group, there are 3 qualifying questions you must answer. If you don't answer those, you won't get entry into the group. It'll just automatically reject you. So please answer the questions. Just give me a little bit of background, why you're interested in the video material I'm putting out there. Because we do live in a society where we have to watch ourselves. And again, the fear that they like to control you with, they also like to cut off people that are doing what I'm doing and putting out alternatives. So I have to kind of protect myself to some extent, especially since I currently have a job in a allopathic type field, not necessarily allopathic medicine, but I am teaching to pre-allopathic health students. So, you know, I don't know how fond anyone in my department would be if they know that I'm putting this information out there. That really, you know, I'm not saying anything false. I'm not saying anything inaccurate. All I'm doing is teaching how the human body works. What I have issue with is the dangerous treatments that are offered by our mainstream medical authorities, the religion of allopathy. And it is a religion, because in a religion, you know, they try to set up these belief systems and people abide by them and they ignore everything else. And, you know, religion, religare is kind of the Latin derived word from religion, and it means to hold back. It's holding back the truth. And there is a truth that each and every person out there who has something going on with their body, they can heal themselves. You know, where allopathy shines and where I'm grateful for their existence is in trauma and emergency medicine. They can do some amazing things and they can keep people alive. They really can. You know, I was listening to one alternative doctor talk about chemotherapy, and I think somebody asked him, you know, is chemotherapy bad in all cases? And his response, which I thought was a very good response, his response was, well, if a tumor is growing, and let's say it's a tumor in the neck, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's about to push on the spinal cord to a point where the pressure would push on a vertebra and maybe sever the spinal cord. And then what do you end up with at that point? You end up with paralysis. You become a quadriplegic. So in that case, maybe something that needs to work fast and immediately, like chemotherapy, would be the best option, or radiation therapy. But that's like in a very dire need. And this is where allopathy can step in, and they've got, you know, the heavy hitters. They've got, you know, the, I don't know weapons but the most powerful weapon to fight this thing, right? Where we as natural healers are coming in is we want to hopefully start the healing process and reverse this before we get to the stage where the tumor has gotten so big that it's about to compress either a passageway for air or food, or compress on the spinal cord and cause paralysis. You don't want to get to that state, okay? But again, you know, those things could happen. And then, you know, trauma happens all of the time. People fall, people get in car accidents. And allopathy is wonderful, once again, putting the body back together. But just because their toolbox allows them to do that does not mean the tools they have in their toolbox are good for everything else. Because a lot of chronic issues really come down to digging deep and getting rid of the cause, getting rid of the original irritant that led to the progression of changes that resulted in your current condition. And as I like to repeat on every single video that I put out there, you know, it begins as an irritation. So you have something that you have, let's say, breathe in, or that you put into your body by way of ingestion, by eating it, or put it on your skin. And your body doesn't like that. And it starts to react. It starts to say, hey, let's get this thing out of there. So maybe that involves like coughing, or maybe it causes itchiness on your skin. And that itchiness is there to say, hey, I need to itch this off. And you start removing it that way. But if you keep applying these things, or ingesting these things, or inhaling these things that are irritable to your cells, then your response gets louder and louder. And if you keep, again, bringing those things into your body or on your body, then your cells are going to get really pissed off, and they're going to start reacting to that. And the first way they typically respond is through the inflammatory process. So with inflammation, you get redness, you get swelling, you get heat, you get pain. Blood vessels in that area dilate, more blood is brought to the area, more red blood cells. That's where the redness comes from. Blood carries with it heat. The blood vessels, the small blood vessels called the capillaries, become very leaky. Fluids leak out. That causes the swelling, which pushes on nearby pain receptors, and damaged tissues release chemicals like prostaglandins, bradykinin, which is going to trigger the nociceptor or pain receptors. And that's where the pain comes from. So that's inflammation. So that's kind of a bigger red flag, right? So when you get to the state that your irritant has become an inflammation, and now you go to the doctor and they'll give you a diagnosis with itis at the end, like laryngitis or pancreatitis or gastritis or enteritis or colitis. Then you might take some anti-inflammatories, which are doing nothing to get that irritant out, but they reduce the symptoms. But by reducing the symptoms, are you really addressing the cause? No, you're not. So again, if you keep bringing in those things that are irritating to your body, and now the inflammation isn't enough, and you've suppressed the inflammation anyway, so you don't even know it's there, then after inflammation, then we get induration, tissue hardening, tissue change. And the tissue change is really where the more chronic issues are then seen. The cancers, the autoimmune disorders, the loss of function. So maybe if it's an organ like a gland and it stops producing a hormone, you get a certain type of hormone disorder. So that's the progression. That's how these things, they don't just happen overnight. It's not like you wake up one day and you have cancer. You've been going through this for a while, and you've just been ignoring or suppressing the symptoms up to that point. But it's okay. You know, I'm not saying this to make people feel bad. A lot of people just don't know. Again, because we've been programmed to think the doctors always have our best interest, and if they're telling us to take this drug, we should take it. Everybody should take it. We should vaccinate ourselves. We should expose ourselves to chemicals that could be harmful for us. I mean, look at any pharmaceutical insert that comes with your medication. They tell you just how dangerous it is. And I'm just hoping that I can help more people understand how the body works so that we can offer a viable option, a viable plan B, so that the chronic issues that a lot of people deal with are not only going to be at the mercy of the heavy guns that the allopaths have for treatment options. You know, there are more gentler approaches, and looking to nature and natural law is really kind of foundational in this respect. So, you know, like with myself, I personally, you know, like when I was going through a lot of stress just recently, you know, just a couple of months ago, a lot of stress. And I noticed my body was not behaving the way it should. And the stress really did a number on me. So there were some red flags that popped up. It's when those red flags pop up, that's where the choice is. Everybody has a choice. How are you going to deal with this symptom? And you deal with one symptom at a time. And a lot of times by dealing with one symptom, other things, the things that you just thought you had to live with for your entire life, they start naturally going away. For a lot of people, you know, because we live in an age where it's all about how you look, a lot of people just want to lose weight. And they come across a person like me and they're like, oh, I want to do this detox thing. Well, you know, excess weight is a symptom, right? So, you know, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Now, if you're trying to lose weight in a crazy way, there are dangerous ways to lose weight. Hell, chemotherapy will help you lose weight, right? But that's not a healthy way to lose weight. But by losing weight, you'll notice if you do it in a healthy way where you're consuming a diet of nature's food in its raw, natural, organic state, And while you're doing all of that, you're also practicing, mind, body, spirit types of healing, meditation, spending time in nature, um, finding people that you can connect with, that you can be open and honest with. I mean, being able to connect with another human being and communicate with them in a truthful, honest way. That is so important. We're here as a social species. We're not here on this planet alone. And being able to give and being able to feel like you are contributing. These are all things that we can do as part of healing. And it really does amplify the healing process when you look at it in that way. And a lot of us that are going through a chronic issue that we're trying to heal, either for ourselves or for a loved one, we will find something in this healing. I think a lot of our experiences in life, the experience is really just there as an opportunity. So whether it be a sickness, an illness, or whatever, it's there as an opportunity. It's giving you the choice to do something different that you weren't doing before. And in that change, you're developing strength, and you're able to then, with that strength, do really what you're put on this earth to do. But because we have free will, we don't have to make any changes. And unfortunately, a lot of the programming that the television puts in our minds is telling us not to make any changes. I noticed there's some more comments here. Diana writes, oh, Jason, thank you for that comment. Diana writes, I have read 5 days of water fasting is very healing. Autophagy starts at 3 days. What are your thoughts? How does it affect our cells? Well, I think water fasting is great. I mean, I did 26 days of water fasting when I was in medical school. I was doing an internship with Joel Furman. And that's back in the day when Joel Furman was a true natural hygienic doctor. I mean, he was using water fasting as his main modality of healing. And I was quite interested in this when I was a medical student and decided to do an internship with him. And while I was doing the internship, I'm like, hell, why don't I join them all for a water fast? And Dr. Furman agreed, and I was able to do all of my regular duties. I just kind of, was very careful, because when you're water fasting, your blood pressure gets a little bit lower and you want to kind of get up and down more slowly. But yeah, water fasting is kind of the ultimate ketogenic way of healing. We think the big buzzword is the ketogenic diet, but a lot of what they're promoting are a healthy way to get into ketosis. Use water fasting to get into ketosis, and that will, you'll be a little bit of acidic while you're water fasting, but you're not adding more acids in the form of dead animal flesh. And your body does go through autophagy, meaning that you start breaking down things that shouldn't be there. And as you start digesting these things away, you're cleansing, you're detoxifying. Now, you do want to support your organs of elimination. There is some concern about whether people should use the herbs when water fasting. I really think it's better to be on a true water fast and not take anything herbally, just do the water. But you may have to do some enemas. I will put that out there, especially if you haven't been cleansing prior to the water fast, because you will have a lot of detoxification going on. You need to open up those channels of elimination. So, an enema every now and then might be good during a water fast. Jason writes, what a shame your treatment method is Plan B, not Plan A. Yeah, Plan B, it's one of those things. I've often wondered about naming my anatomy and physiology course. But it's kind of like all alternative medicine. Why is it what we do considered alternative? Why couldn't it be the allopathic option is really alternate? Nature is first and foremost. And what we're doing is we're just saying, have a faith in nature. don't have faith in the white coats, the religion of the white coat cult. I don't know. Cal is here. Hello, Cal. How are you? I hope you and your amazing wife are doing well. If you have any questions, please post them. I'm just doing my weekly live Q&A for anyone that's really interested in healing themselves. So if you do have any questions, post them away. And, you know, the reason why I called it Plan B is because when you look at what insurance covers, they don't cover people like me. You have to be licensed for you to be covered by the insurance companies. And, you know, allopathy is so damn expensive. I mean, these pharmaceutical companies make these drugs so expensive that nobody can afford them. And that's why you have to have insurance. I mean, this big racket of getting everybody to believe that this is life. These are the only options they have. And it's nonsense. These are not the only options. You don't have to play the game. You do not have to play the game. It's a board game, and you can opt out. And I'm saying when I say you can opt out, I can say you can go your own pathway. You can say, I'm not going to be limited by their diagnoses, by their healthcare options. I mean, for me, I just go to the doctor if it's an emergency. Like if I'm in an accident, if I fell, then I'll take their services because they're pretty good at doing those things. But anything else, really, you need to kind of pause, look at your symptoms, and try to figure out what can I do to get to the core of why this is happening to me. And a lot of times, again, our society is set up that a lot of us don't have that time to pause and reflect, unfortunately. I mean, so many people are so overworked, and they're working 2 or 3 jobs, and they have children, and they're going to school, and I mean, the stressors are just accumulating and accumulating. And why is our society like that? I mean, they said 50 years ago, by the year 2000, that technology will be so advanced that humans will only have to work 20 hours a week because we'll have robots to do everything. It's nothing like that. Now people are working more than they ever did before. And it's so hard on families, and, you know, relationships are dissolving, and people are sick, and they're exposed to more and more chemicals and more artificial nonsense. And it's breaking us all down, you know. But, you know, you've watched people like Dr. Morris, and he always has a spiritual answer, which I think is really important. You know, we are spiritual beings. We're having this physical existence. And we're put on this planet, I believe. Oh, sorry. We're put on this planet to do something important. I think to raise the consciousness of all that is around us. So I think we'll be put into scenarios. We'll be put into certain experiences. We'll meet certain people. We'll take certain jobs, and these things will be learning experiences. And as we learn from them, we grow. We raise our consciousness. We become more empathic, more sympathetic, more loving, more kind. Because if we don't have those experiences, those hardships, we stay in this closed little system, and we're afraid of everything. And that's really not what we're meant to do, live in fear. That's what Fox News will tell you to do. Or MSNBC or CNN, all of the news stations, really, they just try to create fear. They want to create an idea that we could be attacked at any moment, and you can be, you know, people can drop bombs on us. You better keep watching the news. You better keep following our storyline, because we're going to show you the scariest things out there to make you, you know, feel like you need to watch us to stay protected. It's all nonsense. I haven't watched the news since 2012, and I haven't looked back since. And yeah, maybe it's a little annoying that I don't know when there's a tornado, but I could hear the sirens last time there was a tornado warning here, so I eventually figured it out, you know. And I do have a weather app on my phone. So I can just look at the weather app and I don't have to wait for all of the nonsense on the newscast. All of the fear mongering. All right, folks. Well, my goal tonight was to make green juices for me tomorrow. I'm doing a green juice cleanse this week. I bought a bunch of greens and some apples and some carrots and beets. And I'm just going to juice them. And I've got a bunch of these glass bottles. I'm drinking this so I can use it for my green juice. And I'm just going to have fun with green juices. I just felt like, when you listen again to that inner intuition that we all have, when I feel drawn to something, I just kind of go with it because there's some little message inside of me that's making me aware of that. I did see Tamara Rose. Hi, Tamara. How are you? Diana wrote, did you heal any major health issues for yourself? It's interesting when I started really digging deep, because I was into natural hygiene in my early 20s when I was a medical student, and I really didn't have too many health issues. But when I was in my mid-30s, I kind of diverted away from natural healing at that point in time. I was feeling, sorry, I went out last night with an old college roommate and got home pretty late. And of course the puppies don't let me sleep in. I woke up at 4 a.m. this morning to feed them. And I got home at like 1 a.m. So I'm going on 3 hours of sleep. But anyway, my own healing issues. In my mid-30s, I was dealing with some issues. I was having skin rashes all over, heart palpitations, and I knew something wasn't right. And they started interfering with my ability to teach because I was teaching full-time at a college like I still am today. And I remember standing in front of all of my students and my heart was just racing. And I felt like it was jumping out of my chest. And then, again, the rash. And I went to a medical doctor. She was kind of a integrative doctor, though. She was more holistically bent. And I knew about all of the stuff from working with Dr. Furman. I mean, I knew about natural hygiene and all of that. It's just kind of like I learned it. And then when I decided I didn't want to be a doctor, I got into teaching and I kind of just didn't do much with it at that point. So I decided that these symptoms weren't good. And having gone to medical school, I definitely didn't like pharmaceuticals. I didn't want the pharmaceutical approach to deal with my symptoms. So then I knew, okay, I'm in my mid-30s now. This is the time I take my life seriously, because up to that point, I was just kind of like skating on by. No major health issues, had good energy and all of that. So I think I was like 36 or 37 when I decided to go 100% fruit. I did I think 100% fruit and some green juices. And I did that for a total of 6 months. And it was the summertime, so I was teaching that summer, but summer school tends to be a little less stressful. And during the whole summer, those 3 months that the regular school was not in session, I did some hardcore healing, and I think I lost like 20 pounds or 30 pounds. I have no idea. I know I lost weight, but my energy, it just skyrocketed, and all of my symptoms went away. My sinus congestion, my sinus pain, the pain in my gut. I would get kind of these stomach aches and cramping. The heart palpitations completely went away. The skin rashes went away. I mean, everything just improved. Everything improved. And it's kind of like sometimes it's hard for me to remember. That's what my life was like, And I didn't use an allopathic drug to heal any of it. I just basically ate fruit. This is before I even knew of Dr. Morse. That's why I tell people diet is foundational. You can do this without the herbs. The herbs are there to help you go through the detox in a way that's going to help you not have as many symptoms. Because I did have symptoms. I did go through a lot of detox healing crises. I remember the headaches were intense. I had really bad headaches, really bad stomach cramping. I remember a couple of days I had like full-fledged body aches. Like I couldn't even move my body. So whatever was being pulled out of my interstitial spaces, it was really making me sore. I remember trying to walk up the stairs in my house, and it was just like every step was grueling, and it just like I had to pull my legs up. And in healing, crises are intense, but in that you're getting rid of stuff, right? You're getting rid of the nonsense that shouldn't be in your interstitial spaces. So all I simply did was I listened to my body. I took note of the red flags, of the symptoms that were calling out for attention, and I got rid of the cause. And who knows what that would have developed into had I not taken action then, had I just taken a drug to suppress those symptoms. Who knows what could have happened, right? So Diana, that's kind of my own healing story. And so after I did that, and I felt amazing. So I did that, like I said, for 6 months. It was shortly after those 6 months that I came across, first I came across Dan the Man, the Life Regenerator, and then through him I found Dr. Morse. And then I started writing to Dr. Morse. I scheduled a consultation with him. This was back when he was doing consultations himself. And I remember we talked for like 2 hours about the lymphatic system. He was just such an amazing guy. As you all know, Dr. Morse is just, he's the lovingest, gentlest man, but he is so smart. And he's got such an amazing insight to the human body. I mean, I was just mind blown because all of my training was just like being turned upside down. And I was now seeing the human body in a more simplistic and truthful way, thanks to him. So I am quite grateful for what he shared with me that day. And then, as many of you know, later on, a few years after that, I started working with him down in Florida. And I was going to go back to Florida with him more recently until I had this major shakeup in my life. And who knows? I mean, if Dr. Morse will have me back, I would love to work with him again. But right now, I feel like I need to be close to my family and be there for my mom and dad because my family needs my help right now. So that's why I'm here in the Midwest teaching at a college. But still trying to do my own thing so that I can maybe still be part of that. And you never know how life changes. I mean, my life has changed so many times, and I've kind of fallen on my butt a few times. But then you get up, and then you're like, oh, new opportunities, right? So everything we kind of fall into, whether good or bad, they're all learning experiences for us to kind of make decisions, make choices, and then carry on. And even if it's a health crisis you're dealing with, you can make the decision to heal. And healing is very simple. It just comes down to removing the cause, and the cause is often interstitial congestion. So let's see. Diana also writes, do you think short water fasts heal the body quicker? Well, I think any water fasting you can do is going to be beneficial. You know, you can easily do up to 5 days without supervision, but, you know, keep in mind you want to rest. You don't want to be doing a lot, like driving around, having to go here, there, and everywhere. You want to rest, you know, stay at home, be comfortable, maybe watch some uplifting movies or anything like that to kind of revive your spirit. But you know, if you're going to do anything beyond 5 days, just have somebody to talk to. You know, there are water fasting clinics in the United States, and I know there are places in other countries where you can water fast. If you want to do something with like a detoxification specialist, then I would recommend something like the Master Cleanse, which is basically using lemon, freshly squeezed lemon juice in water with a little bit of like cayenne pepper. Cayenne pepper has so many healing properties. It's amazing. Cayenne is really healing. You know, if you have like people that have had heart attacks, take cayenne. and you can like dissolve clots. So cayenne is pretty wonderful. But, you know, if you can do something where you're not doing 100% water and still be quite detoxifying. In fact, Dr. Morse is not a big fan of water fasting because he thinks, and rightfully so, many people are so toxic. And I experienced this with my 26-day water fast, and I was young. I was, you know, in my early 20s when I did this. And I can't imagine someone doing a water fast that's, you know, in their 40s or 50s, and they've got a lot of congestion that will be released. You have to take it slow. And so if you can do, you know, several short water fasts, I think that's a great thing to do. I really do. It's better than doing nothing. It's better than, you know, other options that many people would pick that might be easier. All right, so any other questions for me? Because I do have to make some green juices tonight. I also have to feed my puppies. One more meal. They eat 4 meals a day. All right, folks. Well, like I said, I went out last night and spent some time with an old college roommate, and it was fun, but I didn't get much sleep. So I'm going to call it quits here. I'll see if there's any other. Oh, thank you, Diana. Thank you for your questions. I truly appreciate them. And I appreciate all of you that came to watch this live Q&A. I apologize for the dogs barking early on, but like I said, this is a live video and I really can't control them at all times. And they do seem to start barking towards the beginning of my videos, if you've noticed that, because they tend to be a little bit I don't know, stingy with my time. They want me for themselves, but you know, they're puppies and they're cute and they're babies. So have a wonderful evening all. And like I said, if you want to watch this recording, I will post it in my private Facebook group. And the link of that private Facebook group is in the description of this live Q&A. So have a wonderful evening and I will see you next week, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Bye.